You look like a true podcaster now. Now, finally, you got credibility. Before it was just like, yeah, no, that's not right. Did you listen to a couple episodes, Morten? I assume you did.
I
All of
did.
them.
I think the first one I heard, I didn't get further than that.
Okay. Like, what the is this?
But you know,
Um,
Heini, little kids, I don't get like 1 hour of time to just sit and relax and
no,
listen to your sweet
that is
voice.
true. No, yeah, you wish you would, but not always.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey everyone, this is Heine Sakaraisen here, and welcome to Founders Weekly, where we cover the news for startup founders and tell stories we can learn from. Today we have a special guest, and he's going to tell us what it's like to walk the floor of New York Stock Exchange the day of the IPO of the company that he co-founded. The dream of every founder. In the news, we are talking Google and their lack of innovation, a new way to fund later stage startups, as well as, obviously, AI. My co-host today is Hassan Bazzi, a founder, developer, and a friend. Welcome, Hassan.
Hello there.
Let's go straight to the news. Tech giants cut corners to train AI models. Tech giants like OpenAI, Google, and Meta have reportedly bypassed their policy and discussed bypassing copyright laws to source training data for AI. AI has ingested content from everything from novels to videos and songs, sparking demands from copyright holders for compensation. So, what do you say here, Hassan? Is this okay?
I mean, here's the thing. When it comes to this, there's this huge debate going on, right? If, let's say, you have a novel or you have a New York Times piece or whatever it is that you have, really, and you ingest it into an LLM, you can't really get it out of the LLM or the model,
No.
let's just say, the way it goes into it, right? It's just essentially a bunch of ones and zeros. And so that's what the OpenAI and Microsoft are saying is that, yeah, sure, we're training on your data, but the kind of training is much different than what training on data used to mean, right? Now, I see
Meaning
that point of view
so
in
if
a
I can
way.
stop, so the way we think, hey, no, they're putting it into a database and then they look it up, and that's not what they're doing.
No, that's not what they're doing at all. Again, it's you're just training this person or AI or whatever you want to call it, right? Like imagine it this way, to like be trained on what's the best next word to say based
Yeah.
on everything else it's ever seen before. But everything else it's ever seen before is also kind of like encoded. Like it doesn't really know what it is. It doesn't mean anything in that space.
No.
Like if you go and look up a model, you can't go in and find that New York Times piece that you used for training at all, right?
No.
So in that sense, again, it's just such a weird gray zone, right? Should
Yeah.
content creators be compensated and stuff like that? Absolutely. So I think there is
Yeah.
a middle ground here that needs to be addressed.
So let's say you're a painter, right? You went to 80 galleries, and when you're 22, you paint this masterpiece. And it's similar to that, right? You got inspired from all these things, and then you put something together.
Absolutely. The only problem is I can bring this thing now and train it on 80 of your paintings and say, paint something in the style of Heine, and it'll
Yeah.
do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
So
Which is a little bit scary, right? Because it did clearly learn something.
it did. I mean, this is kind of going back to, what is plagiarism and what is just like pure, I'm being inspired. Like, why not
Yeah.
in school? We could have said, oh, I was just inspired by this article I copied one to one, right?
Yeah.
So there's a gray zone there, and I think it's going to be addressed. I mean, there are lawsuits going on, right? New York Times versus OpenAI and others.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of legislation or maybe like laws come out when it comes to this. The laws are not there yet.
No, they're not. But by the way, what do you think happened? Like going sort of at this story, what do you think happened? Did they do this or not?
Oh, absolutely, they did. Yeah. There's no question about it. That all
No.
these companies talking about their policies when it comes to AI, I think their policies is get as much as you can and train as much as you can, buy as many GPUs, and make the biggest models we can.
Yeah.
That's
It's
it.
like a race right now.
It is a race.
Yeah. So an extension of that story is that Adobe is now actively purchasing videos at $3 a minute to develop their own AI text to video, sort of competing with OpenAI's advancement. So this is interesting because Adobe has previously, they've been out and said, hey, this picture model has been trained only on pictures that we already have a license to. What do you say about that?
It's cute. I mean, it's Adobe just being like, oh hey, we're gonna be the good guys here. But I don't know how scalable that is. I mean, that is expensive. What did you say? Like $3 a video or something? Yeah, I'm not.
$3 per minute.
I mean, we need to. Oh, $3 per minute. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk some more, Heine. I think we should
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
extend these videos
Just
to
keep
get you
going.
rich. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that
Uh,
was my next thing. Maybe I should sell my video. But obviously, you only sell it once and you build the brain. So you're sort of paying someone to replace you.
yeah, that's fair. But then, what if you want to retrain the model? What if you want to like have a new one? Do you start all
Yeah.
over again? Do you pay people all over again? Is it just a one-time thing? Is it not? This is one thing
This
with
feels like a
music, right?
one-time
Like,
thing.
do you
Yeah.
just license it once, or does every time you got to use, I don't know, some symphony, you got to pay for the license again? And I
Yeah.
think it's the latter actually in the musical scene, right? So is it going to be the same
It
here?
is, but this does not feel like that.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
This seems more like something where, you pay once to build the brain and then the brain will replace you.
Correct. Well, hopefully, but again, but what if you need another brain? What if you come up
That
with a
is
different way
true.
to train the brain, which is what's happening, right? All these
Yeah.
models are retrained, like GPT-3 and GPT 3.5 and 4 and upcoming 5. Sure, they might share the same data set, but every time they're starting from scratch when it comes to the actual training.
Okay.
So
Okay. Understood. Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai says it's hard to innovate in huge companies. In an interview at Stanford, Sundar said it's hard to innovate at a huge company. I mean, my comment to this is no shit, Sherlock. And sure, this is true. It's harder to innovate at a big company. But the question is, other big companies do innovate. Yes, it's harder, but they do innovate. So is this a Google problem? Is this a Sundar problem, really? What do you think?
I can't believe this. I really can't believe this, man. I'm sorry. Like maybe there's a lot of Sundar fans out there, but really, you can't innovate in a big company, and you're talking
Say that. Tell that to
as the
Microsoft.
Google CEO.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to look at Google as the innovator, right? Like if you want to innovate, go to what's Google doing? What are they up to?
Yeah, exactly.
And suddenly now it's the product graveyard. Uh, and now you're just not only admitting it, you're just like, oh yeah, this is just how it is. We're just a big company. Instead of like, what's going on here? We used to be amazing, and now we're not anymore, and we're building stuff and losing them. What should change?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to be honest, Sundar, I think you should change. I don't have, again, it's not a personal thing, but that's at
Are you
least
should you
one
should
thing.
change the innovation or change him?
Change him first.
Yeah,
Right?
I think so too. It's time.
Especially because you have amazing people at Google. Like I know
Totally.
personally such incredible engineers that are at Google. And when you have a soccer team, right, and you have amazing players and they're not performing well, first person they change is the coach.
Well, the rule is if a few people on the team are not performing, you replace them. If the entire team isn't performing, you take the coach. Yeah, I mean, look, it's there's something wrong there. It feels like they're innovating, but they don't have the courage to release. And once they release, they don't have the stamina to keep going. And then you don't have much, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's again, it's very unfortunate, but if you're a startup founder, great.
It's a great
Google
opportunity.
is killing your startups less. So
Yeah,
keep innovating,
totally.
right? Because they won't do it at least.
And have the courage to release and keep going.
Exactly.
Cool. A new publicly traded fund invests in high-profile private companies. A new fund called Destiny Tech 100 is offering a publicly traded fund that contains shares of 23 private tech companies, including Stripe, SpaceX, OpenAI, Discord, and Epic Games. The fund is listed on the New York Stock Exchange and plans to expand to 100 startups. So this has been a problem for a long time that companies don't IPO at the same rate as they did before. But now they have this little trick here where they actually list a fund or whatever we call it that then invests in private companies. What do you think about that?
That is so cool. That is so how does this work? Is it basically like a thing where a bunch of people own stock, let's just say, in SpaceX or whatever, and then you're kind of just investing into that fund that's funding these like startups, or let's not call them startups, like private
No,
tech companies.
these are later stage,
Definitely
right?
not SpaceX is not a startup, but
Yeah, I would assume they buy secondaries, right? So they're
yeah,
buying secondaries and now listing that. There are secondary funds out there that would buy
right.
from employees, co-founders, etc. But this is a new thing that they actually have it listed. I think it's super interesting.
It's super cool. It's super cool. Especially, I think it allows, the average investor or like any person just like invest in tech startups. And especially because it's a whole fund,
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. I think the only thing is going to be like, which funds do you go after? I mean, is
yeah.
there going to be an early stage fund or something
Th-
for
th-
promising startups?
this is the next thing here. I mean, we have VC funds now, but they're private. Like they have LPs, but why wouldn't it be listed? Could it be listed? I think
Right.
that is incredibly interesting, and honestly, maybe more interesting than this because I'm really worried they are going for. It says high profile, hype companies, and then there's a risk they'll just pay too much, and then if you don't buy well, it's never going to be a good case.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, more of like, oh, hey, here's a list of 100 startups we think are super, super, super promising, and you can invest in those startups, in the stock market until the day they IPO or they don't. And
Or
that's
die.
that's another thing, right? It I think opens also another topic of IPOing, right? Like, is it still, every founder's dream? Is it not? I don't know. I know we
We are
might
going to
have.
talk more about that in a second. That's
We
for
might
sure.
have someone, yeah, that might
Yeah.
have good answers to that.
Yeah, totally. But I think this is interesting. I would love to see an early stage fund that says, "Hey, we're going to invest in early stage, maybe a round, and we're going to do 100 companies, and then we're just going to list it, see what happens."
Oh wow, yeah, like every essentially like really big VC might even have like their own their own thing on the stock market. I think that would be pretty sick.
That'd
Um
be kind of cool, right?
wow.
Okay, before we're going to break, here's a smaller product story. Threads missed out on its earthquake moment. Instagram Threads, it's competing with X/Twitter and has just released its trending feature. However, when New York and New Jersey were hit by an earthquake in the morning, it didn't trend till in the afternoon, although a lot of people were talking about this. So it was a trend, but they didn't show it till later. But Hassan, you're still on X, so this is not relevant, right?
Well, sort of. It is still relevant in the grand scheme of, again, like building a product is really 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 difficult,
It's just
right?
difficult.
It's
Yeah.
extremely hard. Now here's the thing. I still I'm a founder believer. I'm a startup believer. I think when you're solving for hard problems, it's actually not just easier. It's never easy again, but it's more appropriate to solve it in a smaller team that's very, very
Yeah.
focused. All X is doing here, or sorry, Threads,
Threads.
is it's just copying X, right? Like copying X, copying X, copying X. And it's not really innovating. We don't see any new innovative features.
But this is classic Meta, right? Meta.
Yeah,
That's what they do. But they're good at it.
they are good at it, but to a certain extent, like they've done it with companies that have been, much smaller kind of thing. Now you're copying one of the giants of the world, and the best company in the world that does something like this. And again, you're not adding the meta flavor, you're not adding something different. Like if
No.
you were a startup
Yeah.
founder, right, and you were to do a new X, you would probably think, okay, how is this going to be so freaking good that people are going to say, I don't want this X platform. Let me just move to whatever I'm going to build. Meta's not thinking this way. They're just like, oh wow, yeah,
Yeah. I think one of the reasons why I brought this one up is also because people looked at Twitter when they were annoyed at Elon and just said, hey, someone just copy this? This looks easy. It's just a text space. But then it comes to building a product, it's always a little bit harder. I think that's a little bit of my point here too.
oh absolutely. It's really, I mean, blue sky, isn't that what it's called, right? Like Jack
Yeah, Blue Sky,
Dorsey,
yeah.
the founder of
His own.
Twitter, decided, I'm just gonna do a new one. I still have no
Yeah.
idea what's going on with that. They made it this like super closed community. It's like you need an
Yeah.
invite,
It,
and
it's open now. It's open now, but still not great.
yeah, because these things are very very difficult. So
Yeah, 100%. Okay, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what it's like to IPO on the New York Stock Exchange. Okay, we are back. Today's guest is Morten Primdahl. He is a co-founder of Zendesk. Zendesk is a leader in customer service software, and they IPO'd a few years ago. Welcome, Morten.
Thank you.
Great to have you. So let's go a little bit back in time. I sort of promised the audience we're going to talk about the day of the IPO to really feel what is that like, the dream of many founders. What was that day like? But tell us a little bit about where you were before that. Like how mature was the company? How big was the company? Where were you? And so on.
So we were headquartered in San Francisco and around 400 employees. We'd crossed a run rate of $100 million, which is sort of the entry point for IPO considerations. And this, of course, had been a roadshow done by mostly the finance people and Nickel. And eventually we decided that the IPO was right. That's the IPO window. It was sort of closing at the time.
Oh, I was.
So it was, with some nerves to make the decision. And then Mikkel made that decision, the right one, to IPO. And what you wanted to get from that was maybe a broader way of independence from your investors, right? They get their exit. You don't have to listen to them quite as much.
No.
So that was the entire point.
So at some point, the finance people and Mikkel, who was the CEO at the time, said, "Okay, this is time. We're going in." And then you flew. This is New York Stock Exchange, so you would fly to New York, right? What was that? What was that day like? How did that day start?
So I think we came to New York 1 or 2 days before the actual IPO. I had flown in my brother and my mother and my niece to join me in New York City. Rented a nice suite for us to stay in Manhattan, and I being there a day in advance was super nice because the stock ticker symbol, the Zen, shows up in the iPhone stocks app, which is just whoa, man, this is real, right? You don't believe
Wow.
anything, you see that, whoa, right? And these little things were just super nice. It's this external realization that your company is becoming something that other people objectively would like to invest in. And I think that's the first real tangible sense of, okay, we've done something, right? All the other rounds, everything else is fictive. All the VCs just, yeah, it's funny money, but once you IPO and it becomes real, it's on the stocks app, then it's real. So the lead up to this, the big day was just seeing these things. Outside that, I was walking around New York City taking phone calls, trying to recruit people, work as usual. And then it happens the morning of the IPO. I think, is it at 9 a.m. they open on Eastern time, the markets? I think it is. So that was 6 a.m. San Francisco time, so maybe a little tired in the morning. But we all showed up in front of New York Stock Exchange and had this massive banner on the facade of this beautiful old building with our mascot at the time, which was this Buddhist-like monk with wearing a headset, man boobs and everything. So it's that was the time, and this cheeky looking dude up on this old classical building that means so much. So that's, you enter that building very happy, and then you walk inside and it's this beautiful old walls and marble and everywhere. And there's this trading floor. You walk into that from this tunnel-like structure. You walk up on the trading floor and monitors hang down from the ceiling down, and you have the traders walking around looking at the monitors, and they all show the Zen stock ticker symbol, and it's just you get a presentation of the room. They take you into a back room. Everybody gets a little badge made of brass where they've etched in your name and your title. This like a permanent souvenir. And you stand there and you have breakfast and everyone's happy in a good mood. And then it becomes, I'll just keep going, okay? But then it becomes
Keep going.
Then it comes time to ring the bell. And ringing the bell means you step out on the balcony. So we'd invited, a diverse set of employees. People just joined the company, old hands, and not like straight up old school executives, just a bunch of the people who represent Zendesk to join us at the balcony. And we stand there. We have some, this was just when the selfie stick was becoming a thing, So we had this guy from Zopim, which we acquired out of Singapore. He came with his selfie stick. It's a novelty. And he would held that up on the balcony. So we have some great pictures from that. But we assemble around that. And then the time comes to ring the bell, which is the push of the button. Ding! And the market's open. And then the stock starts trading. Obviously, an IPO, the trade price has been agreed upon. There are people who are going to buy this at a certain price, and how
It's
much
pretty
volume,
staged
whatever.
at that point, I guess.
Exactly, right? But that's when it starts, and that's when the ticker $Zen on your iPhone stocks app starts becoming a number, and that's when it's it's real. Yeah.
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow.
Well,
So
I
how
mean,
was
yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Heine.
No, go ahead, Hassan.
I was just gonna say, like, how is what you just described, which by the way, thank you for the very in-depth description. Like I was imagining myself there. How is that different from like what you thought it was before you even like did the whole thing?
I hadn't even thought about what it was, you know? It was so alien to me. I was just still grinding away, trying to fix bugs and recruit people for
Yeah.
security posters, whatever, you know? But it was just overwhelming because it was romantic and it was like it was a finish line, but not like everyone says, we're just getting started, you know? And we said
Yeah,
that
you're
we're just
still in the middle of it, right?
right, you know? But
Yeah.
also,
Wow.
you reach something so tangible, you know, and you can't deny yourself that, hey, this is real.
Yeah.
So for me, it was the first validation that I could somehow accept. Everything else, the rounds, whatever people think and write, didn't matter. But this, for me, was emotional. And to be honest, you know, to me, it was also the start of thinking about, so what else do I really want to do?
Mm.
Because it was such not a finish line, but such a stepping point in what a company is and your career as an entrepreneur is, that I really had to sort of say, okay, now what, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I guess a lot of founders have sort of an imposter syndrome, right? But once you see that, it becomes really real, and maybe you feel less of an imposter.
Oh, absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
founders, day in, day out, you walk into that office, you push that rock up the hill, and then next morning there's another hill. It's even bigger. You know,
Yeah.
it's so ridiculous, right? So
Yeah. Then you
the
keep going.
validation, you know, it matters. The validation matters, and it matters to celebrate your victories because it's so brutal otherwise.
100%. 100%. I mean, that's an incredible story, and I love the way you put the words on it there. I have
Mm.
one more thing I want to cover with you, Morten, and it's a little bit of a different story, but it's also a story that has been told before. I'm not sure Hassan has heard it before. So, when someone searches for a piece of software and maybe wants it for a lower price or something, they would go on Google and say, "I want an alternative to something." They would say Photoshop alternative or a Zendesk alternative, and there is a story that you were annoyed by this, and how did you solve that problem?
So part of the Zendesk history is we hired a guy, a very creative guy, called Matthew Latkovich out of Boston when we were there briefly, and took him to San Francisco. And he was part of this team of creatives that were like super fun and quirky and thinking out of the box all the time. And there's this guy, Ethan, as well, Canada writer, um, who's those guys would brainstorm, you know, this alternative stuff. What do we do about it? So they came up with this idea of a band called Zendesk Alternative, make it a music video where they play alternative music about customer service. And if you Google it, it's still there. And you know, it's an amazing piece of
Wow.
marketing, creativity, anti-churn mechanism. Of course, some people would try and, you know, pardon my French, piss on that parade and just criticize it for being idiotic. But most people loved it. I mean, even people who hate Zendesk, right? And it is so much fun. I watched it recently. It still comes up once in a while. It is so much fun.
But literally, if you search for Zendesk alternative right now, this comes up as the number one like organic search.
I'm pretty sure they don't put any money into that. I'm pretty sure you're right. This
No.
is straight organic.
Yeah, 100% organic. And
Wow.
I mean, it's you go on there, you see the video and so on. It's just incredible. Obviously, alternative is look alternative music. This is a real band from Seattle. I mean, that's what it looks like.
Well, these are just people who are hired by Zendesk. These were like different, some guys in marketing and whatever, you know. And, one guy would play the drums, he was in sales, you know, and we have Xavier on bass, he was doing like product marketing, you know. So these are just different people from
Just
the company
dudes.
coming
Wow.
together and just doing stuff.
That's insane. So it
Amazing.
was actual like Zendeskers kind of thing. Like not you didn't hire some band.
No, these were just regular people employed, just getting together with the creative people and just having fun.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we had
This
a lovely culture and vibe in that office.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the logo. You talk about the logo, which is like a Buddha with a headset on. It's a wonderful. Your marketing has always been incredibly good. Okay, we are back with some questions from the community, and we're going to talk a little bit about the podcast too. I've promised full transparency on how we're doing here, so we're going to do that no matter how painful it is. But the first question I have is about we're going to talk a little bit IPO, and you said it earlier about the IPO window, and it's probably been closed for some time. But what do you guys say? Is it open again now, or where are we at?
Ask Donald Trump.
Yeah, he would know. What do you think, Hassan? Are you seeing action there or what?
Uh yeah. I completely agree with Morten. I think the Donald Trump thing kind of flipped everything to where now like every possibility is a possibility. Um, for a serious company, I mean, I don't know. I think
What are you saying? They're not serious?
maybe I'm saying they're not serious. Maybe.
That's okay.
So we're at a place where the fundamentals, they got to be right. So Heine, you and I, Zendesk and Divino and many others came out of a straight growth, like the longest bull market in history. Now
Yeah.
you've got to show profitability, right? So with the right numbers, of course, there's an opportunity.
Totally.
Yeah.
And look, take Reddit. We've talked a lot about Reddit on the podcast too, and they're doing good. It's a weird stock, but they're a real company with real revenue and all those things. And Truth Social is not, right. It's just, I don't know what it is. So if just to get to the question, the window's open, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
think it
think I
is.
think it is too. Like what I really like is I think we've seen a huge shift back to the fundamentals, whether it's IPO, whether it's raising money, right? Like about profitability and building a proper company. I think the La La Land days are a bit over, right? And it's great. It's honestly really really good. I think we're gonna have better companies that build better products and serve users even more, right? Because you need to be serving, like you need to be building something users actually love for you to have them pay you. So
Totally.
it's it's a good trend.
Yeah. How soon? And Morten, I guess we're old enough for that. How soon do we forget again?
I don't know. Do we ever forget? Are we do we just keep being optimistic, even if we remember? It's
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. We put it somewhere in the back, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna do another one in a similar, but this one's a little bit for you, Morten, because we talked about this. Hey, this being a dream of many, it's to IPO a company and live what you just told, the amazing story you just told us. So, what is the biggest downside of doing an IPO?
So when we IPO'd, we were around 400 employees. And then about a year later, we had a sales kickoff in Canada with around 400 people in sales. So you see where I'm going. When you IPO, there's some expectations from the market. You have to have your earnings calls, and you have to go in and beat and raise, set expectations for the next quarter, and beat the ones for the past quarter.
Yeah,
So there's an entire terminology and mentality about how that is done, and sometimes I think it can come at the cost of product and customers, and to provide sales the resources they need to succeed, right? So you can build a big, heavy sales org and sort of forget what made your product. I'm not saying that happened. I'm just saying, there's a lot of interests, and they're not all just the heart and DNA of the company. The interests are also external, and they will drive your decisions in a different way.
yeah,
Then there's some. I mean, mostly in the engineering sides. There's some process stuff. There's some compliance stuff. Here too, you have to be mindful when you implement processes like compliance, audits, these kinds of things. How do you do that in a way where it doesn't bottleneck your company? How do you do that in a way where it doesn't become a productivity loss? But there's some stuff you need to think about, which can be
yeah.
alien when you're a startup kind of person, because you can be a little all over the place, right?
Totally, totally. Another thing people talk about is this quarter mindset because everything's measured in quarters. Did you ever feel that, and what do you think about that?
I feel that we had a strong leadership, and that's not including me, but on the product team, and they were able to see, past the next quarter, and while still giving sales, here's a chunk, here's some stuff for you
Yeah,
guys to sell, and still reminding sales that there is a reason that sales is a job. There's a reason we have you guys. That is because the product doesn't just sell itself. We chose that path a long time ago. Originally, Zendesk had 10,000 customers, paid customers, before we got anyone in sales, right? But
yeah,
we realized that we can sell more if we have a sales group. So we got that. And that's the reason that's a job. So reminding sales, you got to do your job. We will feed you. Here's the strategic roadmap. And it goes past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarters, right?
yeah. Okay, okay. Hassan, what do you think?
Yeah. I have a question actually. How much did sales kind of feed back into product around that time?
So we didn't see much of it in the product teams per se. It was negotiated, at the executive level. And of course, when you're competing against Salesforce and the likes companies of that caliber, then of course it's obvious we need more than one product. We need more than just a support product. We need, the chat product. We need the Salesforce management product. So
Right.
these things feed into big decisions for the product teams that, may not be something we really agree with, but could see the necessity of on a business level.
Yeah.
So bridging that is a constant ongoing thing. Product people, engineers, we all understand each other and we can speak at a higher goal and say, as a business, how do we succeed? It's not just by building that little product that we like the product team, but also building what the customers want. What do they want? What's the market want? That's the ongoing conversation, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And obviously you I'm not gonna say you slow down, because I'm sure you built a lot, but sometimes it feels like you slow down because you suddenly have 1,000 things you're building, right?
I've had so many one-on-ones with people in engineering who felt, I never got anything done, and then the things I would tell them is like, okay, instead of looking at last week, look at the last year. What did you actually do? We did
Yeah,
all
totally.
these cool things. And these things you did that not just for, 2 or 3 people buying your product. You did that for like 1 million or more support agents, like hundreds of thousands of businesses using the product, Each hour you spent, you scaled your time to millions of people who would be affected by
Yeah.
each hour you put into this. Remember this. So yeah, we move with more care than
Wow.
we used to, but it's because your impact is so much bigger.
Yeah.
That's
Totally.
amazing perspective, actually, when it comes to this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, there's a risk you forget that, so it's super important. Okay, cool. We're going to move on. So we're going to talk a little bit about the podcast here, and the news is better now. Look, the numbers are still small. Let's get real, but as I always say to startups too, maybe you don't want to set sort of clear goals, but you got to make sure you grow. So we're back on path of growth again. So last week, the first week, 446 downloads, which is a growth of 16% from last week, which is good. We're getting there. So if you can keep sort of 2-digit growth for some time, I mean, then it really becomes interesting at some point. When it comes to the subscribers, up 8%, also good to see. So happy with that. Any comments?
Keep going. That's how it is, right?
It's like everything,
That's the
right?
first thing you told me, Heini, when we first met.
Yeah.
You said if it's up to the right, you're okay, because I was panicking along with my co-founder at the time.
Yeah.
So,
Just got to keep going.
I'm building a small shorts company with my brother. We make shorts. It's one of my side projects. We make shorts just for men. We only have like 4 models, and we've been at this for a long time, 3 years. We're going to launch this summer. And what struck me was when starting small is it's just as painful and as hard as when you do something big. You put the
Yeah.
same emotions into it. And that's why you have to just aim for the stars anyway, because, it's just equally painful. If you're building, I'm sure, Tesla or building your podcast, Heini, you'd feel the same way, right? So that's just the nature of it.
Totally. But that's what we do, right? And we like it. I mean, I just could have decided not to do this, but I did decide to do it. So it is what it is. So if we can keep growing, I'm incredibly happy. And the cool thing about these things is the people are subscribed. So next week, usually it does get a little bit better if you do well. And you guys have done amazing today. So, okay, with that, we have come to the end. Please make sure you follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And please leave a review and rating. It really helps. Thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
For all of you on YouTube, please make sure you check out Raw Startup. A lot of videos about how to do a startup. That's it. That's this week's Founders Weekly. Now stop listening and go build something.